5:04 a.m. over Belgorod, Ukraine fired 2 HIMARS rockets across the border. Their target wasn't a trench or an ammo dump. It was 4 Russian helicopters parked in the open, engines running, crews refueling as if they had all the time in the world. 2 K-52 Alligator gunships and 2 Mi-8 transports, the backbone of Moscow's rotary fleet, sat exposed on a landing pad deep inside Russian territory. The order was simple and merciless. Launch now, or let those helicopters take off and strike Ukrainian lines. Within seconds, the countdown ended, and the rockets were already in flight. In less than a minute, $50 million worth of Russian air power would face destruction from weapons that cost a fraction of that. If you want to see how precision, timing, and speed can flip the balance of modern war, make sure you subscribe to Military Power, because what happens next will change the way you see the battlefield. 6:47 a.m., Ukrainian channels lit up with urgent reports. Radar had tracked 2 K-52s and 2 Mi-8s sitting idle at Belgorod. Within moments, the strike was underway. One helicopter was shredded mid-takeoff, another crashed in flames, and the landing zone dissolved into chaos. Russian media kept silent, but images spread quickly online. Black smoke rising from what had been considered a safe rear base, wreckage of Russia's most advanced helicopters scattered across the ground. Analysts quickly estimated nearly $50 million in losses, wiped out before crews could even react. For Ukraine, this was more than a lucky hit. It was proof that Russia's prized attack helicopters, once thought untouchable, were now vulnerable anywhere, even inside their own territory. For Moscow, Belgorod was not just another staging area. It was supposed to be sanctuary. The strike turned it into a symbol of exposure. The war has moved past the front lines. Now even the rear can burn. And every base once thought safe is just another target waiting to be exposed. From the moment the reconnaissance drones spotted movement on the pad, the clock began to tick. The K-52s, deadly in the sky, were now vulnerable, tethered to fuel lines with crews moving casually around them. The Mi-8 transports, though unarmed, were just as valuable. They carried troops, supplies, and sometimes even electronic warfare kits that kept Russian frontline units alive. To leave them untouched was to risk another day of strikes on Ukrainian positions. The drone's thermal camera confirmed what human eyes could not: 4 hot silhouettes glowing against the cold ground. Every second that passed meant one more chance for the helicopters to lift off, so the feed was relayed directly to the 27th Artillery Brigade command post. Within minutes, the decision was made. This was the perfect window for Operation Eagle 24. 2 M30A2 guided rockets were prepared, each loaded with a 200-pound high-explosive warhead. Their accuracy would not rely on guesswork. GPS, inertial guidance, and corrections from the drone overhead narrowed the margin of error to less than 3 meters. In practice, that meant a near certainty. If the rockets were launched, those helicopters would not survive. Inside the HIMARS launcher, concealed under camouflage netting, the crew worked with disciplined speed. The commander verified coordinates. The gunner adjusted elevation. The driver kept the engine warm for a quick escape. The order came down with no hesitation. Fire 1, fire 2, relocate immediately. This was not just an artillery strike, it was doctrine in action. The American principle of shoot and scoot, perfected over decades, was being applied with ruthless efficiency by Ukraine. A few $1 million in rockets were about to challenge $50 million in hardware, and more importantly, the very idea that Belgorod was beyond reach. 40 kilometers from Belgorod, hidden beneath a tangle of camouflage netting and a frozen tree line, a launcher waited. To an untrained eye, it looked like a simple cargo truck, but inside sat one of the most feared systems in modern warfare, HIMARS. Its 6 launch tubes were loaded, engines humming low, crew strapped in with headsets. The fire control panel lit up, as coordinates flowed in from the drone circling above Belgorod. The gunner double-checked distance, elevation, and wind. The commander repeated the target set like a mantra. 2 K-52s, 2 Mi-8s, engines hot, no air defense in sight. In their world, that was a once-in-a-war opportunity. Fire mission authorized. The order was flat, almost routine, but every man inside knew what it meant. The first rocket left the pod with a violent crack, the launcher rocking back as a streak of flame tore into the pre-dawn sky. At Mach 2, the missile became invisible almost instantly, fins adjusting course as GPS and inertial guidance aligned its path. Seconds later came the second launch, another thunderous blast echoing across the trees. 2 warheads now raced toward Belgorod, carrying with them over 360,000 tungsten fragments, waiting to shred anything caught in the kill zone. Inside the HIMARS, there was no pause to admire the work. The pod lowered, camouflage sheets were thrown back over the chassis, and the driver rolled forward. The entire sequence, from ignition to withdrawal, took less than 3 minutes. By the time Russian radar screens began to flicker, the launcher was already kilometers away, vanishing into the countryside. This was the essence of American doctrine, transplanted into Ukrainian hands. Hit with precision, disappear before the enemy can strike back. Operation Eagle 24 was no longer just a plan on paper, it was in motion, and within moments Russia's prized helicopters would face their reckoning. At exactly 5:04:15, the first M30A2 missile completed its arc. To the human eye, it was just a faint streak vanishing into the clouds. To the K-52 on the ground, it was death descending at nearly Mach 2. The rocket slammed into the tarmac 3 meters from the cockpit, its 200-pound warhead erupting in a blinding flash. The explosion shredded the helicopter's armor as if it were paper. Tungsten fragments ripped through rotor blades, severed fuel lines, and detonated the 30mm ammunition packed inside. In one violent second, the Alligator, once the pride of Russia's attack helicopter fleet, was no longer an aircraft, but a fireball. Flames engulfed the fuselage. Spinning rotor fragments cut across the landing pad like shrapnel from a giant buzzsaw, and the shockwave hurled mechanics to the ground. Before the echoes faded, the second missile arrived. Unlike the first, it wasn't programmed for a direct strike. It detonated in midair, precisely above the cluster of Mi-8 transports and the second K-52. The blast carved the night open with a deafening crack, spraying 180,000 tungsten fragments in every direction. The Mi-8s, still tethered to refueling trucks, became instant coffins. Shrapnel tore through their fuselages, slicing open engines and fuel tanks. Fire leapt from ruptured hoses, feeding a chain of secondary explosions that engulfed the entire landing pad in rolling waves of flame. The second Ka-52, though parked farther out, caught a storm of debris. Rotor blades shattered, avionics fried, and hydraulic systems burst into fire. Within seconds, it too was reduced to a skeletal frame, twisted and unrecognizable. On the ground, chaos erupted. Crews sprinted aimlessly, some ducking behind fuel trucks, others diving into ditches. But survival was a matter of luck, not instinct. Those closest to the pad were cut down by flying steel, their bodies thrown like ragdolls into the dirt. Radios crackled with broken shouts, but there was no coherent command, only panic. Russian radar operators, miles away, finally began to register anomalies. Blips had appeared too late on their screens, remnants of missiles already at target. By the time alerts reached the command post, the helicopters were gone. There had been no interception, no warning, not even a chance to scramble. The strike was clean, fast, and total. For the HIMARS crew, the confirmation came not from sound, but from sight. Inside the drone control van, operators watched the feed as fire consumed the pad. One Ki-52 exploded so violently that its rotor mast flew 100 meters into the air before crashing down in flames. The transports crumpled like aluminum cans under the pressure of the airburst. In less than 30 seconds, what had been 4 operational helicopters, assets worth nearly $50 million, was reduced to wreckage. The commander, listening over the secure net, finally allowed himself a single nod. Impact confirmed. Mission successful. His tone was flat, professional, but the weight of the moment was undeniable. Operation Eagle 24 had struck with surgical precision. 2 rockets, launched from hidden ground, had erased Russia's illusion of sanctuary inside Belgorod. For Moscow, the humiliation cut deep. The K-52 wasn't just a weapon, it was a symbol, showcased at air shows and paraded as a match for the American Apache. Losing one was a setback. Losing 2, alongside Mi-8 transports, inside Russian territory itself, was something far worse. A message. That message was simple. Rear areas are targets, and no distance is safe. Across the border, Russian commanders scrambled to react. Emergency flares lit up the horizon, illuminating what was left of the pad. Helicopter crews in neighboring bases received frantic orders to relocate, lifting off into the darkness with half-filled fuel tanks. Air defense units raced to deploy, but their arrival was too late. By the time a Pantsir battery rolled toward Belgorod, the HIMARS launcher was already miles away, camouflaged beneath another tree line. The entire sequence, detection, launch, impact, withdrawal, had lasted less than 8 minutes. In that short window, Ukraine had not only destroyed high-value aircraft, but had also rewritten the tactical rhythm of the war. No longer would Russian helicopters be able to sit exposed, waiting for fuel or maintenance. Every refueling cycle, every pause on a landing pad was now a moment of vulnerability. The cost exchange was brutal. 2 rockets, together worth less than $10 million, had erased aircraft valued at nearly $50 million. The ratio was undeniable. The psychology, even more devastating. For every Ka-52 pilot in Russia, a new thought would haunt them. Survival was no longer about skill in the cockpit, but whether they were lucky enough not to be caught on the ground. This was the climax of Operation Eagle 24, the moment when Ukraine's intelligence, precision, and speed converged to prove that even the heart of Russia's rear was a battlefield. And as the fires of Belgorod rose into the dawn sky, the world was already taking notes. When morning light broke over Belgorod, the devastation left no room for denial. The makeshift landing pad that hours earlier had hosted Russia's prized helicopters was now nothing but charred earth and shattered steel. Satellite photos quickly confirmed what rumors online had already spread. 4 helicopters worth nearly $50 million had been wiped out in a matter of seconds. What Moscow once called a secure rear area was suddenly revealed as a soft target. The consequences came quickly. Russian commanders ordered all helicopter flights in the sector suspended until further notice. Fuel depots and ammunition stores were moved deeper inland, while short-range air defense systems like Pantsir and Tor were rushed in to create an improvised shield. Convoys were delayed, supply routes rerouted, and every pilot briefing carried the same unspoken message. Safety no longer existed. The blow was not only financial, though the loss of K-52 Alligators and Mi-8 transports stung deeply, it was psychological. Pilots who once took off with confidence now carried the fear that even rear area bases could turn into kill zones. For Ukraine, the strike was about more than 4 destroyed airframes. Operation Eagle 24 proved that modern war rewards those who confuse real-time intelligence with precision fires. 2 rockets, costing under $10 million, had neutralized equipment worth 5 times that amount, delivering in minutes what weeks of trench fighting might not achieve. The lesson was clear: agility and coordination can outweigh sheer numbers. Observers across NATO seized on the event. Analysts in Washington and London noted how a single precision strike reshaped an entire sector of the battlefield. The comparison to the Pacific came quickly. If HIMARS could destroy helicopters in Belgorod, what might similar systems do against warships or amphibious forces in the Taiwan Strait? In Belgorod, the fires eventually burned out. But for Russia's military planners, the real damage lingered. The myth of sanctuary had been shattered, and the rules of modern war had been rewritten. The Belgorod strike left Moscow with a dilemma that could not be ignored. In the immediate aftermath, Russian commanders moved to contain the damage with visible countermeasures. Air defense batteries were pulled from other regions and redeployed to Belgorod, creating a protective bubble around remaining assets. Helicopters were dispersed across smaller, improvised landing zones instead of clustered pads. Maintenance crews received orders to refuel and rearm aircraft only under shelter, a shift that slowed tempo but reduced exposure. On paper, these adjustments offered protection. In practice, they revealed a nervous military forced to sacrifice efficiency for survival. Electronic warfare became the second line of defense. Russian EW units attempted to jam the skies around Belgorod, filling the spectrum with noise designed to blind Ukrainian drones before they could transmit targeting data. Yet, jamming is never absolute. One missed frequency, one adaptive countermeasure, and the shield collapses. Ukrainian operators already familiar with Russian interference would almost certainly adapt. The cat-and-mouse game of electronic warfare, once confined to the front line, had now reached deep into Russia's rear. Beyond these tactical fixes, a more serious strategic problem emerged. Every helicopter destroyed in Belgorod reduced Russia's ability to provide close air support on the Kharkiv axis. Supply convoys, already vulnerable to artillery ambushes, lost their rotary wing cover. Ground troops advancing toward Ukrainian lines had to operate with less protection from Ka-52 rocket salvos or Mi-8 troop drops. The very act of dispersing assets slowed Moscow's capacity to mass firepower quickly, undermining the doctrine of rapid maneuver it had relied on since 2022. For Ukraine, this opened possibilities. By demonstrating that long-range strikes could paralyze Russian aviation, Kyiv signaled to both allies and adversaries that the rear is the new front. NATO planners immediately took note. The strike was dissected in war rooms from Brussels to Washington, where parallels to the Pacific dominated discussion. If 2 HIMARS rockets could erase helicopters in Belgorod, what might dozens of similar systems do against amphibious landing forces in the Taiwan Strait? Could Chinese depots on artificial islands be destroyed before an invasion fleet ever set sail? Meanwhile, Russian doctrine now faced uncomfortable questions. How many more helicopters could be risked in exposed positions? How much faith could be placed in electronic jamming or hasty air defense bubbles? And most importantly, if sanctuaries no longer exist, how can a long war be sustained? What began as a 5-minute strike in Belgorod was already shaping the logic of future wars. It reminded every planner from Moscow to Beijing that modern precision warfare punishes anything left unprotected, and that adaptation, not size, will decide who prevails. The Belgorod strike proved one brutal fact. There are no safe zones in modern war. In less than 6 minutes, 2 rockets worth under $10 million erased helicopters valued at $50 million. For Russia, the loss was more than material. It shattered confidence. For Ukraine, it was proof that speed, intelligence, and precision can offset sheer numbers. But the message stretched far beyond Eastern Europe. NATO analysts pointed out that what happened to helicopters in Belgorod could happen to ships in the Pacific or to bases once thought untouchable. In the 21st century, mass without agility is just a bigger target. So the real question is, who will adapt faster? The side clinging to old doctrines, or the one rewriting them with every strike? If you want to keep uncovering the hidden lessons of modern warfare, hit subscribe to Military Power. More untold stories are coming. See you next time.